guidance note is that of the safe person. This means that a surveyor must assume responsibility for their own safety, the safety of colleagues, and the health and safety of others in the workplace. The guidance note confirms that Borex-regulated firms must provide a safe working environment, safe work equipment, safe systems of work and training to ensure that staff are competent. Staff must use these safe systems and equipment to protect themselves and others on site. This could include being provided with and wearing adequate and well-fitting personal protective equipment, PPE, under the Personal Protective Equipment at Work Amendment, Regulations 2022. The provision of PPE applies to both employees and casual workers, known as LIM A and B workers respectively. This includes steel-toed and soled boots, high-vis jackets, safety helmets, hard hats, and gloves. The specific PPE required will depend on the work environment. Regulated firms must carry out risk assessments in relation to the office, workplace, and sites that surveyors may visit. Surveyors must also carry out risk assessments before visiting or inspecting a site or property. On site, a dynamic risk assessment should be continually undertaken as the situation may be different or change on the day, and the surveyor's actions or activities may be modified as a result. An example of this could be a dog on site, which the surveyor needs to ask to be contained in a separate room, or an unsafe loft ladder or limited access, which the surveyor cannot use or access safely. Risk assessment involves assessing what could cause harm so that sufficient precautions can be taken to prevent harm. A hazard is defined as something which may cause harm. A risk is the likelihood of the harm happening. Risk assessment usually involves the following steps. Identify the hazards. Identify who may be harmed and how they may be harmed. Evaluate the risks and decide on precautions to be taken. Record the findings and implement them. Review and update the risk assessment regularly. Advise those affected by the outcome of the assessment and methods of work, or other control measures necessary, to minimize or eliminate risk. Candidates should also be familiar with the hierarchy of risk control. This involves the following: eliminating, redesigning the activity or substituting a substance so that the hazard is removed, for example using a drone to avoid working at height. Substituting, replacing the materials used or the proposed work process with a less hazardous one, for example using pre-prepared components rather than cutting on site. Engineering controls, using equipment or engineering controls to manage risk, for example using work equipment or other measures to prevent falls, or separating the hazard from operators by enclosing equipment. Administrative controls, identifying and implementing procedures to work safely, for example reducing the need for lone working or ensuring that work is undertaken in daylight. Using PPE, only acceptable if the aforementioned measures cannot be used, for example emergency alarms could be provided where lone working cannot be avoided. Firms will also need to carry adequate insurance, such as employer's liability, covering claims by employees who are injured or become ill at work, and public liability, covering claims by the public for personal injury or property damage insurance. Regulated firms must lead on health and safety compliance from the top, with clear written policies and procedures. All candidates should ensure that they read these, and can discuss them at their interview. Specific issues which might be raised in company policy include providing a safe place of work relating to ventilation, heating, lighting, and welfare facilities. Minimizing risks relating to monitors and workstations. Personal protective equipment. Manual handling. First aid. Reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences Regulations Ritter, 1995. Safe electrical systems. Control of substances hazardous to health Regulations 2002. Asbestos. Fire risk assessment. Working hours. H&S induction. Driving. Stress. Lone working. Lone working is an issue which is essential to manage. In 1986, Susie Lampla, an estate agent, went missing after going to meet an unknown client. Firms and surveyors need to be aware of the risks of lone working. If it can be avoided, then it should be in line with the hierarchy of risk control. If it cannot, then these are some precautions that surveyors can take. taking a charged mobile and personal alarm, planning an escape route, implementing a callback system with the office, for example a safe word, making a daily schedule available to colleagues, being careful in roof voids and when using ladders, parking your car close by and keeping your keys on you, making sure you know who you are meeting, following your gut instinct, understanding the site rules for construction sites, being aware of aggressive occupants and dogs, informing others of any medical conditions. If in doubt, however, always withdraw from the situation or inspection. You can always return later with a colleague, or when the problem has been resolved, or you can record a limitation in your report or client advice. If you are asked to inspect a site alone, and you are concerned, take a stand and refuse, report this internally, and only inspect if you feel it is safe. Your safety and life are at risk, and this is far more important than any piece of work, project or instruction will ever be. Working at height is one of the leading causes of injuries and fatalities, including falling from ladders and walking on fragile roof coverings. The key legislation in this respect is the Work at Height Regulations 2005. Risk assessment is required before any inspection involving working at height. This includes considering the height required, duration of the inspection, frequency of inspection and the roof or surface condition. Applying the hierarchy of risk control, working at height should be avoided where possible, for example using a telescopic pole and camera or a drone instead. If working at height cannot be prevented, then action to prevent falls should be taken and the risk of a fall minimized. This could involve installing a guardrail anchor points, attached to a safety harness, using a fall arrest system, scissor lift, ladder or tower scaffold. Scaffolding should ideally be tagged and dated after inspection, confirming it is safe. Ladder safety is something that all surveyors should be trained in. The Home Survey Standard, which applies to residential level 1, 2 and 3 surveys, confirms that a ladder, at least 4 meters long, can be used to inspect flat roofs and loft spaces where the access or hatch is no more than 3 meters above ground or floor level. The top section of the ladder should extend 1 meter above where the surveyor steps off the ladder. The condition of a ladder should be checked before each use. If the ladder is telescopic, care should be taken to ensure that each extendable section is locked into place securely before use. The HSE website provides excellent additional guidance on ladders. Finally, the Borex published a guidance note on health and safety for residential property managers, first edition. This covers a wide variety of compliance areas for residential property, which tend to be more onerous than commercial premises due to the more intensive use, including occupiers sleeping and living in the property. A managing agent's obligations for a residential block will depend on the type, age and size of the block, the tenancy agreements in place, and the individual nature of each tenant or leaseholder. For long leasehold apartments, a service charge is typically paid by the leaseholders concerning the management and repair of the block's common areas. The freeholder, who may pass this liability to their managing agent, is responsible for the common